Hey, this is Sheryl Crow, and you're listening to Walking the Floor.
Perfect.
Bada bing, bada boom.
I'm walking the floor over you.
Walking the floor.
I'm walking the floor. Walking the floor over you.
Hola, senors and senoritas. This is Chris Shiflett, and you are listening to another fine edition of Walking the Floor. We got a good one today. It's a superstar episode today. So welcome to another one of my dispatches from the road. It is summer 2017, and I'm on tour in Europe. Today I'm in Copenhagen, trying to wake up, drowning my body with caffeine, waiting for my scrambled eggs. We had quite the jet set day yesterday. We started the day in Prague, flew to Poland, played a crazy rock show festival, and then after the show, flew to Copenhagen, where I am sitting here today. That's 3 countries in one rock and roll day on tour, man. It doesn't get much more jet set than that. As a matter of fact, it has been a week of crazy shows. We played, of course, Glastonbury over the weekend, and then Budapest, Prague, Poland. Tonight we're playing at Roskilde, and that should be good. That's a very nice festival. Oh, you know, somebody asked me to explain, this can just be like our little gear roundup moment, but somebody asked me to explain my Ace Frehley Les Paul, okay? Because I think that guitar gets mistaken often for being some sort of official Ace Frehley Les Paul thing from Gibson, which it is not. I actually just bought an Ace Frehley sticker a long time ago in a record store when I was on the road, and I stuck it on my white Les Paul Custom, and that's all that is. It's not a great story. That's it. I just put an Ace Frehley sticker on there, but it is a good Ace Frehley sticker. I've never seen another one like it anywhere, which maybe explains why everybody asked me about that guitar. But the guitar actually has a greater sentimental value to me for a completely different reason, and that is because when I joined the Foo Fighters, I went to my very first Foo Fighter rehearsal after getting the gig, and we were talking, and Dave said, how many guitars do you have? Because we're about to go on tour. And I said, well, I have 2, but one of them has a broken headstock, so really I have like 1 functional guitar. And he just kind of chuckled and was like, well, all right, meet me at the hotel before we rehearse tomorrow, and we'll go guitar shopping. And so the next morning, we jumped in his rental car, and this was in the days when they still had guitar stores on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, California. And we went over to like Voltage and whatever those ones were that were there, and we took the Dave Grohl credit card, and that man did buy me 2 guitars to get ready for tour. One of them was a white Gibson Explorer, and the other one was the white Les Paul Custom that I'm talking about right now. So that guitar will forever be a very sentimental, special guitar to me. And it's also probably my best sounding Les Paul, just kind of randomly. Love that thing. I use it for all my D tuning songs. Speaking of which, let's get on over to Zounds.com and sell some gear. You know Zounds.com, the world's greatest online music retailer that lets you play as you pay, because at Zounds, you never have to pay full price all at once. You can split your order total over 4, 6, 8, or 12 monthly payments, whatever fits your monthly budget best. Zounds.com. Every person you talk to is a real musician. All right, let's get on over to the interview. Okay, so if you listen to this podcast regularly, you know that it's not often that I get superstars at the level of Sheryl Crow on the show. And normally when I do, I wind up going to wherever they are. But somehow, in this case, she wound up coming to my little demo studio in Mar Vista, California. So that morning, I was getting ready to go do the interview, and I mentioned to my wife, I said, I'm interviewing Sheryl Crow today. And she kind of paused and was like, where? I go, over at my studio. She paused again. She was like, is it still a total dump over there? I was like, yeah, it's worse than ever. And she just said, that's embarrassing. And you know what? It was kind of embarrassing. It made me self-conscious to have Sheryl Crow in my dumpy little studio. But she didn't make fun of me or anything and couldn't have been any nicer. She was great. She had even played the night before at the Greek and still managed to get over to my studio a few minutes early, which was very courteous on her part. We talked about a whole bunch of great stuff, not the least of which was her wonderful new album, Be Myself. So this is Sheryl Crow being herself on Walking the Floor.
I'm sitting on a mountain taking in this glorious view. Well, I know
So you played last night at the Greek, right?
Indeed.
How was that?
It was fun. Really fun.
I've never played the Greek, but it's one of my favorite venues
It's great.
to see people
It's a
in.
great place. It's a beautiful place for one thing. I mean, and last night was a full moon.
Oh, nice.
It was just gorgeous, and I am just so in my. I feel like I've just had new life breathed into me. It's been such a nice, last 10 years.
Really?
So playing now has just been a gift from heaven.
And you still made it to a morning interview early.
Just
that is the sign of a
barely.
seasoned professional.
I had my 10-year-old who's on Nashville time came in at 6:40. Mom, I'm awake. Go back to bed. But I'm awake. You know when I'm awake. I'm awake.
Do you bring your kids out on tour
Yeah.
a lot? So do we.
Yeah.
As much as we can. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
during the school year, you can't bring, or we
I know.
can never bring
and
them out, but
I didn't
sometimes.
tour the last 2 years, really, mainly so that they would. Are we on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, unless you want me to cut any of that
No,
stuff.
no. No, I didn't tour the last 2 years because I felt like, okay, my kids need something more regular. And when I told my now 10-year-old 2 years ago that I was not going to tour for a while, he got really emotional, overwhelmed, and got really teary. And he's like, we're not going to go on the tour bus anymore. It was like I had taken away part of his life,
Oh, kids love tour buses.
He loves it.
And so
I
often
mean-
we're not on tour buses anymore.
Oh, yeah.
That's like, they're always like, where's the bus? I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're on them. I mean, we're still at that level. We'll never have our own private planes and stuff. Although they like that, but they love the tour bus. I mean, that's when my kids were little. They both had, their cribs bolted in. They grew up. They both had passports by the time. Actually, my 7-year-old had one at 2 weeks because, when you adopt, you don't know when you're going to get a call, and I was already, booked. So I got him, and 2 weeks later, we flew to the Bahamas, and then we're off, to Europe, and it's like a village. It's just you hand the baby around, and they acclimate to your life, and then that's what they love.
I always tell new parents that that's the easiest time.
It
is when they're babies, and before they can say no and run off.
Yeah,
travel
exactly,
all you can.
exactly. Before they can talk back.
We're at a funny point now where my oldest is 13, so he's a teenager now. And this summer, and we haven't been on the road for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Either, but this summer, my wife's going to bring the kids out for some of the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah.
And my oldest actually pushed back for the first time on it. He
He
was like, no, I want to go to
did.
camp with my friends and go do that. Then I was like, what?
Yeah. See,
You're going to Paris, young man.
That's right. And you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to experience that. I mean, right now it's kind of like the perfect time because they love it. We brought out Razor scooters and they're just like, oh, freedom. But I know I'm going to have that pushback at some point. And it's different. I'm a single mom, so they have a bunch of guys around that are awesome, father figure kind of guys that have been around their lives since they were babies. And
The crew and the band.
the crew,
all that,
the band, so it's very much like a family circus, but there will be that point where I'm sure, particularly my 10-year-old who's discovered the comb, and I catch him in the bathroom quaffing, There's going to be a point where he's like, I want to stay home with my girlfriends, play
I love
video
that
games.
when your kids become self-aware of how they look and what they're wearing. It's a funny stage.
It is funny, man.
I remember my youngest at one point when he was really young. We were out on the road, and my guitar tech's name is Sean.
Okay.
And then Taylor, our drummer, he has a
Right.
son named Shane. Okay, and we were out on the road, and my youngest had been hanging out with Sean in an airport or something, and the next day he goes, I want to have a play date with Sean. And we're like, you mean Shane? You mean Taylor's son? He goes, no, Sean. He wanted to have a play date with my guitar tech.
Yes.
That was
yeah.
so funny.
I mean, that's how my kids have grown up. I mean, it's extraordinary. You want them to grow up with kids, but my kids' early days had a lot of adult friends.
Right.
And there's something to that. I mean, the people around me are really great people, so they've modeled, some really, I don't know, some broad way of looking at life, and my kids have really picked up on that, so it's been good.
Hey, are you at the very beginning, I assume, of a long, lengthy tour cycle?
Yeah, we are. We're going out on the Outlaw Tour this summer, which actually is just going to be a blast because I've worked with Willie Nelson for almost 20 years off and on, and he's still going strong. He got sick about a month or two ago, and I texted him and said, "Oh no, you don't." We have a big summer, yes. Yeah. And of course, he texted right back and said, "I'm great," But it's going to be a really fun summer because it's all people I love, from Willie to Bob Dylan to my Morning Jack at the Avett Brothers, Sturgill Simpson, Neil's going to be. It's just going to be a really fun summer with lots of people I love. And man, at this stage, after doing this for 25 years, it's just really inspiring to be around people who are still doing it, even young people all the way to people like Willie who've been doing it forever, and just be in that mix. So it's gonna be awesome.
I mean, you've been touring for a long time.
Yeah, since 1988, I guess.
Oh, really?
Well, I went out with Michael Jackson. That was my first gig, and then we really started in 1993. So.
Well, I mean, going out ahead of or going out for the summer, we haven't been on the road. Last time we were on the road was November of 2015, and we were in Europe, and it ended with that terrible shooting in Paris. We were supposed to be in Paris a couple days later, and then that happened, and we canceled the rest of our shows.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
Since then, obviously, it's a sort of crazy time in the world, and there's been a lot of that kind of stuff. Most recently with Manchester. I mean, I got to be honest, I'm not like a reactionary person. I take most of what the mainstream media has to say with kind of a big grain of salt, but I have a little trepidation about going on the road overseas right now. I don't know. Do you ever feel like that?
Well, we played Manchester the night before that happened.
Oh, really?
Yes. So we were there, and we played. We drove back to London. I put my kids on an airplane, and then that night were the attacks. And I've been. I mean, my whole life really revolves around my children. So they managed to not really hear much about that, and I've never felt unsafe on the road.
Right.
I mean, obviously, we're not playing giant stadiums or big places like Ariana Grande, but it can happen anywhere, obviously. I mean, somebody drives a truck through, on the London Bridge and starts killing people, and it's just, the world is not recognizable to me anymore. I grew up in a really small town, and you went out on your bicycle in the morning, you came home at dinner time, and it's just a different world now. And the one gift I've given myself is to wean myself off of 24-hour news.
Yes.
And to wean myself, to be perfectly honest, off my iPhone. And I'm constantly encouraging people to do that, because what I find, and obviously I'm a dinosaur when it comes to social media. I didn't grow up with it, so I don't have that bloodthirsty attitude about knowing what everybody is writing about me or who's connecting with what. I don't have that, but there is that addiction of always having your one eye on the phone, even when you're driving and your kids are in the back seat. And I find that the moments that get away from me right now, I can't get back. And I don't want to look back on my life and think I missed out on a lot of things, even though I was in the room,
Right.
And
I do that with my like filming my kids at their recitals and things like that, where I'm like, why am I staring at my screen right now instead of just looking? I could just do that, and I could actually see them doing the thing.
I know, and it's I really a lot of this record that we just wrote is about that. Is about the fact that even though we all have this gadget that's supposed to keep us connected, it's also created a giant chasm of disconnect for not only between us, but also a disconnect with us from our own emotions and our own experiences. And now we're almost incapable of experiencing an emotion. And I think it's part and parcel of what's happening in the world at large. The fact that, even looking at the government, this could not be happening if we were present. Right. And we have really actually, we have basically chosen a government that is very indicative of who we are right now. It's representing some major
of the end times
aspects
that we're living through.
Yeah, I mean, it's also replicating some strong aspects in all of us, which is not being present, not holding things accountable because it's 30 seconds ago. And the one great thing I think that has come out of it is I think there is an awakening right now with people, and there are people that are getting hip to the idea that all of it is noise, and that what has to happen is that we show up not only physically but emotionally. And my life has improved 100-fold by my just weaning myself off of technology.
That's really hard to do. I mean, I find myself
very hard
constantly
to do.
reprimanding my kids about that, wrestling their devices out of their hands.
Yeah.
But I'm just as guilty, you know?
I know. Well, I'll tell you what, that is the one thing I caught myself checking my, well, not caught myself. I still catch myself a little bit checking my phone at stoplights.
Right.
And my kids will say, Mom, you're on your phone.
Yeah.
And I know that when my 10-year-old gets to be 16 and I'm like, you are absolutely not allowed to text. Well, you do it.
Oh, yeah.
And modeling is, that's a big thing. But yeah, it has taken me a while to just, wean myself off of stupid things like eBay even.
Right. Sure.
I think I'm just going to check my eBay. I've got a few
Well,
minutes.
you're a musician. What about reverb.com?
Oh, okay. I'm going to step back and just say, I did check eBay the other day and I bought the guitar that I've been looking for ages.
What's that guitar?
An ES-140.
Which one is that?
It's a hollow body. It's a Gibson. It's blonde. They only made like 75 of them.
Is it the same shape as a 335?
It is,
that
but
kind
it's
of thing?
smaller.
Ooh.
It's a smaller body. It's a 3/4 neck. It's a hollow body, and it's just a beautiful guitar. And I have a sunburst, but I've never seen a blonde one except for one in Japan. This guy had for like $9,000. It was on eBay for $2,300. And I was like, sold. So I was like, thank God. Thank God for my iPhone. Thank you. You're back. You're back in my life.
Yes. Are you like a vintage gear person? Do you have a warehouse somewhere filled with the beautiful old Voxes and
I am a
Gibsons and
vintage
Fenders?
everything person. If you came into my barn, I just have an absurd amount of just junk that I love.
Right.
Old advertising signs. I really am drawn to like early American. I'm drawn to stuff that was handmade, like old advertising signs before obviously the printing press were painted. They're just beautiful works of art that I think really represent who we were. All art
It's
does
crazy
that.
how different consumer culture was.
Yes.
There wasn't a consumer culture at that point. Advertising was just like, this is the plow you need for your farm because it does not like this is going to satisfy your deep emotional need to, and you're going to get the girl.
Exactly. And a lot of that old stuff was, there were only one or two of them. There was one in the store and one that hung outside of the store. And it's just, I don't know. I love old sacred stuff, old, church stuff. And I have an old church on my farm and where we actually hold meditation, and we've had a lot of picking in there. And I just find that money is best spent when you're creating memories and creating a vibe. And so I'm a big vibe person.
Nice. Well, let's talk about your new record.
Okay.
You made
it's awesome, and everyone should go buy it.
Well, of course. Does anybody buy records anymore?
I know. I was saying the other day,
everyone should go stream it.
It's a really weird thing because, like I said, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur, but my first records came out when people bought records, so you basically knew how many people had your record.
Right.
And I don't read reviews, and I don't watch anything. I don't follow anything. It's my head in the sand attitude that makes my life feel better to me. But now you just don't have any grasp of who's hearing it, who's playing it. I don't know.
Right.
It's just a weird thing.
But you must feel that at your gigs. I always feel like that's how you can tell if people like the new stuff or not.
Yes,
the head
I
bobbing
definitely
at the concert.
Yeah, our first gig was actually we did a little pop-up gig at the Troubadour, and it was it was one of the funnest nights in 25 years.
When's the last time you played the Troubadour?
It's been 25 years, I'm sure. And I actually played the Troubadour when I was in a band called Toy Matinee. I don't know if you remember them, and that was at least 25 years ago. 92. Yeah. But to see people actually singing with the choruses of new songs is just like, wow. It's cool.
That's how you know.
Yeah, but for me, this record felt really liberating, mainly because I'm my age and I'm not even remotely trying to write for radio or for a certain demographic. Obviously, music at radio is very geared towards the kind of like 13 to, I don't know, 26 or whatever.
I read a great quote of yours in regards to that said, I want to have an experience detached from anything in commerce.
Yeah, I mean, I drive my kids to school every morning and they want to hear the Chainsmokers and...
Right.
I mean, they want to hear
does that pressure,
21 Pilots and...
That would suggest to me, obviously, there was a time in your career when you were, actively pursuing like hits and mainstream, radio and all that stuff.
I'm
like, does
sure
that pressure
you guys
come
can
from
relate.
you, or does it come from the label, or both, or where does that come from?
Well, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but for me, the biggest pressure that I put on myself is the pressure I put on myself. Like, I grew up when there wasn't social media. So what I got from what I pictured as being rock stardom and being an artist and writing music was in magazines. It was like
Sure.
Cream magazine and Rolling Stone. I'm really dating myself. Teen Beat, and Friday Night Special, and just the little bits and things that you would see. So it was all very mystical, and I wanted that. That's what I wanted. I wanted to write stuff that was going to be everlasting and that was going to be important. And so I just would put immense amount of pressure on myself. After that first record that sold like 8 or 9 million copies, I was like, holy shit, man. How do you follow that?
Was there like huge pressure to do even more on the next record? Because that seems like something you hear about all the time with when people have monster records like that sell 9 or 10 million copies or whatever, that the label expects. Well, that last one sold 9, next one's going to do 15, and that never happens. Like, it seems like it's a crazy. Like, you should be like, hopefully we'll go platinum on this next one.
Yeah,
and everyone will take a breath.
Yeah, but anything short of like the 8 or 9 million is like a bomb. It's like, oh, she only sold 1 million on this.
I remember Oasis had that huge record. What's the Story? Morning Glory sold like 15 million records or something like that, and the next one sold like 7 million records and was considered a failure. Yeah, 7 million. Can you even imagine selling 7 million records nowadays?
I mean, it would be impossible. I think my head would blow off.
Yeah.
I think the experience though for me with that was that, I was raised with a hearty Puritan work ethic of just stay in the work, and it won Grammys, but I didn't really internalize it or own it. It was like work, 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 work. And then I got into the studio, and the producer I'd done my first record with left after about 24 hours. And I think partly because of the pressure. And I called my manager and said, I don't have a manager. I don't have a producer, and we're at Kingsway. And he's like, just make the record yourself. You know what you're doing. You're a musician. You've made your demos for years without a producer. Just do it. And at that point, there were so many people that didn't believe I had anything to do with the first record that I felt like, okay, not only do I have to compete with that record, with the sales, but I also have to prove that I was even in the room. So
Right.
we really just closed the door and said, fuck it. We
Right.
just, and I
Did the
called
guys that produced your new record work with you on that record too? Because the
it
guys
was
that
just
produced your
me
new
and
record.
Jeff. It was
okay.
just Jeff Trott and I, and we called Brian McLeod, and the three of us went in there and just had a great time, and I just wrote my frustrations and my grief and my excitement and all of it, and without thinking, okay, this has got to compete with that. For me, it felt like, okay, I'm making a Sheryl Crow record,
Right.
And so when it came out, it did what it did, and I actually don't know how many that sold, but anyway, and that from that moment on, particularly with this record, I have always, when I've gone into the studio, I just felt like, okay, it's a new record. Nothing before this exists.
Right.
But on this record, Jeff had just moved to town, who I did a lot of stuff with in the early days and some throughout the rest of my albums. But he moved 3 minutes from my house, and we started getting together, just hanging out. And the next thing we knew, we had 17 songs. And
So you guys write together as well?
well, he plays the guitar, I play bass, I have a mic and a drum programmer, and this record was just like, I've said it before, it's gross, but it was like barfing. I had so much stuff just coming out, and I think it was because there's just so much in the ether, and you're so
Right.
much more sensitive when you're a mom, and just everything felt personal to me.
How
and
do
it
you
was really,
how do you sort of like condense that down into songs? I mean, that's something personally I struggle with too, is that feeling of like, we sort of talked about how insane the world is these days, but how do you sort of like, get that down into a concise 3-minute tune lyrically?
Yeah,
Because it's so big, you know.
It is
it's
so
big,
big.
and there's so much to be kind of ranting about.
Yeah, you know what? I wish I knew the secrets to songwriting because it would make my life a lot easier. I mean, I've made records that, like the Come On, Come On record, I spent over $1 million, $1.5 million on that record because I couldn't figure out how to write a song.
Really?
Yes. And
Was it like a writer's block kind of
it was
situation?
just a nightmare. It was like I went in, I didn't have any songs. I thought, well, I'll just write on the go. And I was just, you know, at that point, needed to take a break and
Right.
just couldn't finish anything. I thought everything sucked and I just couldn't find my way through it. And one day I was at Avatar and Chrissy Hine walked in and we toured together on the Lilith tour. And she's like, what's going on? You know, she's so cool. And I said, man, I've been working on this record for like 8 months. I can't even finish anything. And she's like, what are you doing? She's like, step away. This is not your life. It's your work. And you need to take a break. And she told me how she stopped and raised her kids for 8 years and then came back. And she's like, it's all going to be here when you are ready. And so I did. I took a year off and came back and finished it and enjoyed it. But by that time, there was already like, you know, $1 million down the can.
Right.
But this
Well, you have to have one of those in your career, right?
Yeah,
you have to have the one
yes,
shelf record, right?
yes,
Everybody does.
Yeah. That and you know that was kind of a turning point. I turned 40 that year, and it was a great year. I think largely because the record was done, and I was finally turning 40, and the mystique was gone. Of you know, I'm 40, I'm not married, I don't have kids, you know, and everybody at radio is Britney Spears' age. They're all 17,
Right.
And that's that pressure. That's that weird, you know, are you even vital anymore? But this record that we just finished there was a lot of full thoughts that came out. I think part of it was just I hadn't written in a while. And the campaign really did a number on me. I just couldn't figure out what was happening to us as humans. And who were we becoming? And I found myself kind of trying to protect my kids from seeing the TV and hearing things that they shouldn't be hearing. My 10-year-old came home last year and asked me what the word, you know, the P word meant from the bus tapes of...
oh, right.
And I was just like, wow, what is happening?
There was a crazy thing the day after the election. I mean, maybe this speaks to the fact that I live in, you know, the west side of Los Angeles or whatever, but...
Yeah.
Lots of kids at my kids' school were crying, and they had to have like, you know, like not like grief counselors, but they had to like talk the kids through it because they had been listening to their parents for months and months talk about how the end of the world was going to happen if Donald Trump ever became president, and then lo and behold, he did.
Yeah.
And it scared the hell out of all these kids.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. My kids were nervous about it, but my kids we live in Nashville where there are more churches per capita than anywhere in the world. And the school they go to is a faith-based school, and most of the people there, I'm sure, probably voted for Trump. And so in order to not create, you know, weirdness with them and their friends, we carried on a dialogue. I explained what the perceptions of these two people were. And I remember my kids saying, are you going to vote for the liar or for the crazy man? And I was just like, oh, okay.
I'm voting for the liar, honey.
Yes, I am. But she's a better alternative to. So I think a lot of that just, we would come in the morning. I would take the kids to school, and Jeff and I would sit, you know, basically at the kitchen table and talk. And a lot of what we talked about was all of this stuff, you know, him raising teenagers and me raising little kids, and what social media is doing to their perceptions of self-worth, and what, as teenagers, definitely, and what all these, you know, the dialogue that's happening now that's sort of void of reason and empathy, and largely because I think the internet has created a platform for people to be just really ugly.
Yeah. And that not be held to account for it because it's virtually anonymous. Yeah,
and it also, I think it stimulates the endorphins to just speak super ugly.
Right.
And get away with it, you know. So we would talk and then just go in, and our good friend Andrew would fire up some loops, and Jeff would do what he does, which is just brilliant rhythm guitar, and I would play bass and sing, and a lot of it actually I just wound up transcribing. It's really.
Have you always played bass in
I've always written on bass for the most part. I mean,
because I see that you play bass live, and I always think, God, that looks hard. Like bass is so specific and particular and moving around, especially in the kind of music that you make. Where I think for the singer to be playing the bass must be especially difficult. Because like I'm a guitar player. Guitar you can just strum a chord and hold it out and sing your line or whatever. But bass has to go like boom, ba boom, boom. It's like
well,
moving
I will
around.
say I'm not James Jamerson, but I do get around it. The thing about it is, and I'm sure you can relate to this. Your feel is it's kind of your stamp.
Right.
Like I can play a bass line and this is typically what I've done throughout the history of my career. I'll write on the bass and I'll record it as I'm demoing it, and then I'll have somebody come in and say, okay, play the bass because you're a better bass player.
Right.
But the feel will shift.
Sure.
And then it won't feel the same anymore.
Right.
And then I wind up going, well, it's better with its warts and imperfections,
right,
but to maintain the feel. And
when you record, do you leave the warts and the imperfections on there? Like, are you like?
Well, I always say I'm not
gridded
gonna.
out and cleaned up, and it's modern recording style.
Yeah, I made a record before this one that was really for the country format, and it was really darn near perfect. And it's hard for me to listen to it. So I just like sensing the people in the room, and that to me means leaving the performance, and
right,
it is what it is.
Right.
We demoed it. What we do and what we've always done, Jeff and I, is we write and then we demo it, we overdub, and we make it really as close to as what we want it to be, thinking that we're going to recut it. So we called Chad Blake, had him come over. We were going to recut everything, and we just couldn't get. It's hard to recreate that initial spirit.
Vibes.
Yeah. So we just wound up using the demos.
Oh, really?
On almost
So when you
everything.
were making your latest record, were you just sort of like working when you felt like working and writing and just sort of doing it as you wrote it and
Yes.
as opposed to like, I am in the studio right now and I'm going to cut these 10 songs, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, no, we didn't do that. And we went in and both of us would drop our kids off. I would, work out a little bit, meditate, 10 o'clock downbeat. We'd write, and then at 5:30 in the afternoon we were done. We'd have a Guinness at 4:30, and 5:30 we were done. It was very civilized.
Right, I love that.
It was great.
I love that schedule.
Yeah, man. And people are always like, "Oh, how do you find inspiration?" I was like, "Man, I don't." Nowadays, it's as inspiring for me to work when my kids are at school because
Right.
that's my me time.
That's your golden time.
As 2 o'clock in the morning, which is what
Right.
it used to be.
That makes it very hard to tour for me now. I have to
Yes.
admit, like switching back to that, like up till 3 a.m,
Oh my gosh.
I just can't sleep in. I'm like I don't care what time zone I'm in. I'm on dad's schedule.
I am too.
Always.
Yeah, and right now I'm still in Nashville time. So last night we went on at 8:45. That's like the middle of the night for me.
Right.
It's 10:45. I'm already like REM sleep.
Totally. I always tell my booking agent, if they let me play at like 6 o'clock in the evening,
I
I'd
know,
be like,
right?
great.
That's
Be back
like
in
when
my
you-
hotel watching Netflix.
Oh my gosh, when you go to Japan and you play like at 5:30 in the afternoon,
best.
it's like, yes.
Yeah. But the flip
Love
side
it.
is Japan, you sometimes play at 3 a.m. on those weird festivals too, though. You're
yeah,
like,
that's
what?
true.
How?
Oh yeah, that's true.
You mentioned your last album
Mm-hmm.
from a few years ago that was, you just called it like your country record.
Yeah.
That's how it was sort of presented to the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I have honestly, like, to me, that record doesn't, there's a couple things on there that stick out as being more country maybe than stuff
Yeah.
you've done in the past. But I didn't find it like a radical departure
No.
songwriting wise from what, like, to me, it had more in common, and maybe I'm splitting hairs here, with like Americana acts than
Yeah.
anything that's on mainstream country radio nowadays. I mean, you just
yeah.
mentioned that tour you're going out with like Sturgill Simpson and Willie and people like that. Like, that's where that record lives to my ear.
I really appreciate your saying that. It was a weird, I live in Nashville. I've been there for 11 years, and I've been going there for like 30 years because my sisters live there, and I grew up 3 hours from there. And the country, I don't know about the format. I mean, I don't know about the actual commerciality of it, but country as an idiom has really changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had it in my head that since I lived there and I had so much interest, and so many actual country artists come up saying, you got to make a country record. If it makes you happy, it's inspired lots of girls to want to be country singers. Well, it's not what that is anymore.
Right.
So
it is interesting though that modern country, a certain fact, maybe not like the bro country and all that sort of dance pop version of modern country, but there is a faction of modern country music that seems heavily inspired by 90s, alt rock and pop or whatever you want to call it. Like, you probably know Rami that used to be in the Wallflowers that plays keys with us.
Yeah.
He said he, for years now, gets tons of session work in Nashville because like play that thing like you did on, One Headlight. You know what I mean? Like that's a big inspiration for a lot of mine.
And,
it seems
and
like
I
you would be somebody
petty,
that they would... Right,
like petty influences. Everybody's writing Free Falling.
Right.
It's a funny thing. I think my main beef with it, and I like music in general. I mean, I don't love the bro country stuff because I think it's wildly sexist. But
sure.
The thing for me that really, well, two things. I wanted to make that record because I wanted to experience writing with these unbelievable songwriters. And it was good for me. It was a good stretch. I got to work with really good people. It wasn't anything I'd ever done before. I mean,
But you've done a lot of co-writing before, right? Like,
I've written mostly with Jeff Trott. And I've written, if not by myself, I've written with Jeff, and then I've written with John Shanks a little bit.
How did you find that experience of sitting there in a room?
Really hard, but really good in the end. But my two favorite songs on the record are ones I wrote with Jeff. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, would you go into those co-writing appointments, with some of those hit songwriter folks from Nashville? Like, would you have a bunch of ideas in your back pocket, or would you just go in cold?
I would, but it's funny when you go in, there's a formula there that it's 3 writers always in a room. So if you're an artist and the other 2 songwriters have gotten together before you get in there, and they have some ideas of what they think Sheryl Crow would do.
Right.
So it's a weird thing. And for me, I had to learn how to like navigate through the process and making sure that, okay, well that sounds really cool, but I wouldn't, that's not me. What about this?
Right.
So it was hard. I mean, I really met myself on some of that stuff. But nonetheless, I felt like there was really good songwriting on it, good crafting, which is really largely why this record that I have out now is far away from crafting. I felt like, okay, let's go the other direction. Let's no crafting. But what I was going to say about it was that what happens in the country format is that you go out and you do just tons of radio gigs where you do these free radio events in hopes that you'll get played between 3 and 4 in the morning, and it's, I just said never again, because it's just not what it's about, man. I mean, music is such a cool thing for it to be about advertisers and sponsors. At the end of the day, you just feel like
it's a lot of glad handing.
Yeah. Kind of hoeing yourself out a little.
Do you pay much attention to some of the up and coming or established like Americana acts that are happening these days, like Jason Isbell and people like that? Do you have much? I
love Lightning 100 so much in Nashville. My Shazam is like exploding. I mean, Lake Street Dive. Oh my gosh, what's the girl group? 2 girls. I mean, I'm just Lucius. Yeah, but there's a couple other. I mean, I'm just constantly Shazamming stuff. There's so much good music out there.
Right.
I'm just so into it, head and the heart. There's just so much good music happening.
Yeah.
And I feel so good about the state of music aside from pop.
Right.
And you know what? I don't know what happens with all these. What are they called? Like the Spotify's, the
subscription.
Thank you, subscription.
Right.
It's early. Yeah. The subscriptions. I know I have like a dictionary over here. What's that word? What's that word? I called Pam one night at 2 a.m. Pam, what are the name of the pants that have the pockets on this? I was just like, cargo? I was like, I think I'm losing my mind. I woke up not being able to. I know.
I'm the same way. I'm kind of very senile for a 46-year-old man.
All right, wait till you get to be my age. But I feel good about what's happening in music. Do I wish that people were writing, the hardcore, protest songs and stuff? And do I wish they were getting played at pop radio? Like, what was happening in the 60s and 70s? Yeah, that'd be great. But that's not where we're at. We want entertainment and we need it right now. And that's what's happening. But still, there's this other world of young musicians who are out there doing it,
Yeah.
We have Lucas Nelson in The Promise of the Real with us right now, and
nice.
He's great.
I just interviewed him.
Yeah, he
lives like a couple blocks that way.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to, for people listening, I'm not going to give out the address here.
Yeah, we're in the middle of Indiana, by the way. He's special and he's precious, and I think he is fairly representative of this young undercurrent of not just jam bands, but people who are writing songs in the traditional sense of the word. You know, real heartfelt melody lyric songs, and it's great. It's cool. It's keeping me on my toes.
I tell you, as a guitar player, and somebody that was obsessed with lead guitar player, Guitar Hero type stuff as a kid, because that's the era that I grew up in. That went like horribly out of vogue right about the time that I started like making records and playing in bands that like went on tour and stuff. So I was like, I missed my moment. Yeah. But it makes me so happy to see people like Lucas Nelson that embrace that and do it well.
Yeah, and also for me, it makes me excited to see young people in the audience who are not getting bored with solos. I was listening to NPR, it's been a year ago, and it totally shook me to my core. I was listening to this, I guess these guys have written a book. I think it's like a Swedish production team, and I think they do a lot of like Katy Perry, and I think they did some stuff with Miley and Rihanna. I mean, like a production house. Yeah. And they had mapped out what makes a pop song successful, and it basically comes down to the 6-second attention span. And that our attention span has been whittled down to 6 seconds. And if you don't have a hook repeating itself within 6 seconds, that's when the radio gets, the dial gets moved.
God, that is so sad.
I was like practically, I had to pull my car over practically, just like boo-hoo. So that's why when I hear some of these, when I hear it particularly on the radio, some of this new stuff, right, I go, wow, it's still alive and well, right, at AAA radio.
It's funny, with modern technology being what it is, and podcasts and streaming and all this stuff. Like, I live in a total bubble, so I miss all that stuff. And thankfully, my kids have not gone down that route musically, so I haven't had to endure like the Disney radio channel or any of that stuff. Yeah. Although my oldest is getting into some ugly territory now, but he's old enough that I don't encounter it, as he's just in his room doing it.
Yeah. Is he into pop music?
He listens to, nothing against any other genre. It's just not my thing. He listens to modern hip hop. Okay. That, I think anything that is like catchy and people respond to, there is some art to it. And, I'm not going to dismiss it as like, that's not real or anything. Right. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. It sounds like guys mumbling obscenities, but I guess, but this is one of those things. It's hard to have that conversation without coming off like, get the hell off my lawn, you little whippersnapper.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're saying that. I was just saying the other day, I feel like Mrs. Kreitz. When we grew up, there was this lady who was like, if we walked through her lawn, she'd come out and yell at us. I was just saying the other day, oh my God, I feel like the Mrs. Kreitz of music. What are you listening to?
Where did you grow up?
Turn that down.
Where did you grow up in Missouri?
I grew up in a small town called Kennett, and it is, it's 106 miles from Memphis, Tennessee. So that's where
was Memphis like where you went to arena concerts and things like that?
Saw Peter Frampton, Ted Nugent. Wow.
Really?
James Taylor, all the greats.
Ted Nugent.
He was my first concert. I was 13.
Really? What?
Can you believe that?
Like, what tour would that?
Being
was that
the
like
liberal,
Wango Tang. Well, he wasn't quite so outspoken back then.
No, he wasn't. Cat Scratch Fever. Yeah. That period. It was 19. Well, I was 13, and do the math, Pam. Yeah, it must have been, 62, 72, 75.
Oh, wow.
75, 76.
How great was that, playing the big old Birdland?
Yes. Yeah, and then shortly after that was Peter Frampton. And,
When did you start singing and playing and writing songs? Like, what gave you the music bug? Was it your family, friends?
My family. My mom and dad were in a swing band. They were both musicians. Even though my
dad...
Really? My dad...
I thought your dad was like a lawyer or something.
He's a lawyer, and but frustrated musician. In fact, he still plays in a rock band. He's 85, and he plays in The Usual Suspects. They'll be at B.B. King's in Memphis in August. Go to their website. But he's still rocking in the free world. But they, they played everything in our house. But we all four of us kids were raised playing the piano, classical, got my degree in classical piano performance.
Really?
Which I think is why, like bass, things like that, where you're multitasking. I think piano is really good for that right brain thing.
Right. Getting the hands doing separate things.
Separate from your,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a good drummer. That's my big frustration. But
When did you start playing live and playing in bands and doing
I
that
played my first band. I didn't actually play in bands until I was in college.
sort of thing? Oh, really?
Yeah, I played in a band, a cover band, and I was always the side person, always the keyboard player. And then my senior year, the girl that was in the band quit, and I got thrust into the forefront, and that was like not my world. I hated it.
Really?
Yes. Ugh.
You hated it, and you're like,
Yes.
I hate this, but I'm going to do it forever.
Yeah. Yes, I hate this, but I'm gonna be wildly successful at it. No, I don't know. I think I just felt like where I belonged was being a musician, and it was much more credible than being out front. And then I taught school for a couple of years in St. Louis. I taught music, and I started doing some jingles. And I had a bunch of songs I'd written, and I took my demo tape out to LA. And about 6 months in, after doing some recording sessions, I got booked to do a Johnny Mathis session, singing backup. And I overheard some singers talking about the Michael Jackson audition.
Right.
So I crashed it, and I got it. And I went around the world with him. And
That's
I came.
got to be insanely intense.
It
I'm assuming there was
was.
like a musical director keeping everybody in line.
Oh yeah,
kinda.
it was like big world stuff. I didn't even own a passport. I mean, I'd never been out of the United States.
Right.
So,
But even just the nuts and bolts of running a band must be very different than what you do now, or like what I'm used to.
I mean, I would say that I had before I ever got out and really was the band leader. I'd always done solo stuff. I'd always played piano bars, and I'd played some gigs in LA just on my own, and then I put a band together, and it was just more singer-songwriter showcasing stuff. But when I went out with Michael, and then I went out with Don Henley, and got to sing backup on different events and house bands with Booker T, I really got to, I got to witness a lot of different styles of fronting and running bands, and
Right.
it was good. I mean, it was really good for me. Not everybody has the opportunity to have different master classes in how to do it.
Out of all those people, I mean, who was the most involved and the most musical in actually arranging their live shows and their songs? And
Well,
everything?
I mean, Michael's was more like a Broadway show. I mean,
Right.
we not every night, and we did the exact same thing right down to the pat in between the songs. I mean, his patter was the same every night, and I went out and did 2 duets with him. It was very staged, lots of choreography, and that show we did the same every night for a year and a half. And then the next tour I went on was Don Henley, and that it was completely different. Like, he hung out with us the whole time.
Right.
We all rode the bus together. We ate dinner. I mean, everything was with him.
Right.
Which is more how I operate. And
Sure.
and then after that, I made the Tuesday Night Music Club record, and then just started, playing for 10 people, playing for 100 people, playing for 1,000 people.
Well, when
It
that
just kept
record
growing.
took off, do you think having been around all those superstar people and being around the industry and the biz and all that stuff, did that help you keep your head together when that record blew up and you started selling
Yeah.
millions of records?
Yeah, and I've talked about this with Stevie Nicks quite a bit, because she had a whole life before she became Stevie Nicks in Fleetwood Mac. She was 29, I think 28 when she got her deal, and 29 when that first record exploded, and I was 30. I mean, I'd had a whole life before that.
Right.
And for all intents and purposes, I was like already too old to be doing what I was doing. I mean, to be starting at 30, So I think I was so feet on the ground that and it was during the period of like Smashing Pumpkins and Hole and REM and Beck. I was a total outsider.
Right.
I was so not cool to anybody of my peer group. And I wound up kind of getting scooped up by the elder statesmen like Clapton and Bob Dylan. He embraced me in the Rolling Stones, and I wound up kind of getting lumped in with those people, opening up for them, sitting in with them.
Those are good people to get lumped in with.
Amazing. But then when I would go to like Grammys and things, I wasn't really friends with anybody. I didn't
Right.
have any people,
Right.
and I wasn't cool. I was an outsider, and I was just kind of caught in between. Now, in hindsight, looking back, obviously, I feel so gifted to have been embraced and supported and really propelled by a lot of those people. In fact, it's funny, I was coming back from Europe, it's been 10 years ago, and of course I had like 19 bags full of crap and not claiming anything, and this customs guy stops me and I'm like, ugh, I'm gonna get busted or whatever, and he said, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, yeah, and he goes, I really feel like you're doing a little too much with Willie Nelson. I'm like, wow, okay, welcome back to America where everyone has an opinion. But
were you like, you're hired
to be my publicist? But yeah, you know, I just I've always been on a trajectory of work. If you keep working, you're gonna get better, and as you get better, good things are gonna happen, and blah blah blah. And it really wasn't until I got diagnosed with breast cancer that everything came to a screeching halt. And nothing made sense. Like, it wasn't like, wait, I'm healthy and I'm a good person. How can I have cancer? You know, all of a sudden, it just was, stop the train. I want to get off.
Right.
So, game changer.
Well, what's next for you now?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. After that country record, I did some stuff. I think it was the 40th anniversary of Austin City Limits, and Chris Christopherson was on it. And I've known Chris since 1995, done a lot of work with him, and he, at that point, was really not making memories anymore. For whatever reason, everybody thought it was Alzheimer's. I think maybe it was Lyme's disease. I'm not exactly sure, but definitely not making memories. And his wife approached me about coming in and recording his stuff for him to have as posterity, all of his catalog. So we did like 5 or 6 songs, and I asked him that day, will you come in and record with me?
Right.
So he came to Nashville, and we did some stuff, and I realized at that moment, man, life is ticking on. And I look back at my life, and I think I've been really embraced by the people I poured over in Rolling Stone magazine and Cream, and I've had the opportunity to sing with all these people. I've never asked them to do anything with me. So I started like calling in favors, and I called Keith Richards, and I called Willie, and I called Stevie, and I called Neil Young, and I called Don Henley, and Cope, and just all these people that I love so much and have had relationships with, Joe Walsh. And so, will you come record with me? Right. I just want to have a musical experience that sums it up for me. And so I have this record in the can that I think will come out maybe next year.
I hear a lot of Stones in your music. To me, they seem like they would be like your primary influence in some way. Like, how was that recording with Keith Richards? I've never even met him, but he is my absolute hero really, of all heroes.
You know, it's hard to even put him, you know, he's Zeus, and at the same time he's I don't know. He's so much larger than life to me, but yet he's extremely awake in a way that, I mean, he is so intelligent and so curious still. You know, he's read the Bible like 10 times just as a source of history.
Right.
He's that guy. I was watching.
Plus he's got that thing, you know, he's the extreme example. I always love it when you can recognize who somebody is before you are told who it is, you know, from just the way that they play or their tone or whatever it is. And he's sort of like the personification of that. You just instantly know it's Keith.
I mean, he's really the architect of what a lot of us are still doing. Right. And, you know, we're bad imposters, but yet he's the link to where it all began. But also he's just an extremely awesome person. You know, we were 2 days in the studio. We didn't really even need to be there for 2 days, but it was it was such a fun hang, and he was loving it. We did The Worst, which is a song that I've always loved that he wrote. And I called him and said, can we do it? So I came to New York and we hung out. We hung out in the studio for 2 days at Germano, and it was during the last debate when Trump paraded in the women who were talking about former President Clinton, and Keith had been following all of it. It's funny to hear an English guy who's just, you know, broadly intelligent on so many different levels talking about our election system. Obviously, he lives in America, can't vote, but Just, he's just brilliant. The word brilliant, it just only encapsulates part of it.
Right.
But he's brilliant.
And when's that going to come out?
I think it'll come out maybe late spring next year, I think.
So you're going to be busy
just
for a while.
Just a real source of joy. Yeah.
Are you going to corral all those people together to do a super tour next year?
I think we'll just try to do maybe 2 or 3 events.
Right.
It's, a Mad Dogs and Englishmen kind of thing would be amazing. It would be amaze balls, as my kids say. That'd be amaze balls. So we'll see. But that's in the back burner, and then Jeff and I are going to make an EP real quick in the fall. So.
I mean, that's a pretty insane workload. I'm wondering, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's
all
a
done
lot.
Between school drop off and school pickup.
Exactly. Where does that drive come from in you? Did your parents put that there? Why do you nobody gets to where you are without working their ass off. And then oftentimes when they do get there, they slow way down, and you clearly haven't.
Well, I feel really energized right now. I think, I had some slow years in there where I was deep into what does it mean to be awake, alive, and a human being in our, at this moment in our evolution and in my evolution. And it, I really dug through some stuff, and I wasn't very productive. And that was good. It was necessary. And now I just feel like I just feel really energized. There's just so many things to write about, and I'm just loving playing. I love my band so much. They're adults. They walk out on stage and they really bring it. They show up. I don't know. I just feel alive, awake. I feel younger than I've ever felt. I feel more connected to who I was as a kid than I ever have. So, and I don't know where that's coming from, but I'm just going to ride it until I keel over.
Well, we will look forward to seeing where that goes.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and doing this morning.
Thanks
I really,
for
really
having
appreciate
me.
it.
I appreciate it. I'm really loving your podcast.
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
Before we criticize it, yeah.
All right, that was Sheryl Crow on Walking the Floor. Love her. Make sure to go pick up her new record, Be Myself. You can see her tour dates. She's got lots of tour dates at SherylCrow.com. Find her on the Twitter at Sheryl Crow, as you would expect. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with my pal Lucas Nelson from Promise of the Real. All right. Make sure you go into the iTunes store, listen to all the old episodes and interviews of Walking the Floor. They're all up there. Check them out. Give them a spin. Give us a review. Give us a rating. And when you're done with that, you can go listen to my latest record, West Coast Town. It's in Spotify, iTunes, whatever. It's all up there. And we will see you next week. And then I will warn you, after next week, I'm going on vacation for a few weeks because tour's over. So next week's the last one for a while. Probably for a month or so. And I'm going to go enjoy my family. So adios, amigos!